Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We continue reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. We are reading from Canto 4, the pastimes of Pṛthu Maharaj, chapter 22. Would somebody like to read?
I can read.
Oh, please.
Pṛthu Maharaj's meeting with the four Kumaras. Text 1. The great sage Maitreya said, while the citizens were thus praying to the most powerful King Pṛthu, the four Kumaras, who were as bright as the sun, arrived on the spot. Text 2. Seeing the glowing effulgence of the four Kumaras, the masters of all mystic powers, the king and his associates could recognize them as they descended from the sky. Text 3. Seeing the four Kumaras, Pṛthu Maharaj was greatly anxious to receive them. Therefore, the king, with all his officers, were very hastily got up, as anxiously as a conditioned soul whose senses are immediately attracted by the modes of material nature. Text 4. When the great sages accepted their reception according to the instructions of the Shastras and finally took their seats offered by the king, influenced by the glories of the sages, immediately bowed down. Thus he worshipped the four Kumaras. Text 5. After this, the king took the water which had washed the lotus feet of the Kumaras and sprinkled it all over his head. By such respectful actions, the king, as an exemplary personality, showed how to receive a spiritually advanced personality. Text 6. The four sages were elder to Lord Shiva, and when they were seated on the golden throne, they appeared just like fire blazing on an altar. Maharaj Pṛthu, out of his great gentleness and respect for them, began to speak with great restraint as follows. Text 7. King Pṛthu spoke, my dear great sages, auspiciousness personified, it is very difficult for even the mystic yogis to see you. Indeed, you are very rarely seen. I do not know what kind of pious activities I performed for you to grace me by appearing before me without difficulty. Text 8. Any person upon whom the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas are pleased can achieve anything which is very rare to obtain in this world as well as after death. Not only that, but one also receives the favors of the auspicious Lord Shiva and Lord Vishnu, who accompany the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Text 9. Pṛthu Maharaj continued, although you are traveling in all planetary systems, people cannot know you, just as they cannot know the super soul, although he is within everyone's heart, as the witness of everything. Even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot understand the super soul. Text 10. A person who is very rich and is attached to family life becomes highly glorified when saintly persons are present in his home. The master and servants who are engaged in offering the exalted visitors water, a sitting place, and paraphernalia for reception are glorified, and the home itself is also glorified. Text 11. On the contrary, even though full of all opulences and material prosperity, any householder's house where the devotees of the Lord are never allowed to come in and where there is no water for washing their feet is to be considered a tree in which all venomous serpents live. Text 12. Maharaj Pṛthu offered his welcome to the four Kumaras, addressing them as the best of the Brahmanas. He welcomed them, saying, from the beginning of your birth you strictly observe the vows of celibacy, and although you are experienced in the path of liberation, you are keeping yourself just like small children. Text 13. Pṛthu Maharaj inquired from the sages about persons entangled in this dangerous material existence because of their previous actions. Could such persons whose only aim is sense gratification be blessed with any good fortune? Text 14. Pṛthu Maharaj continued, my dear sirs, there is no need to ask about your good or bad fortune because you are always absorbed in spiritual bliss. The mental concoction of the auspiciousness and inauspicious does not exist in you. Text 15. I am completely assured that personalities like you are the only friends for persons who are blazing in the fire of material existence. I therefore ask you how in this material world we can very soon achieve the ultimate goal of life. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always anxious to elevate the living entities who are his parts and parcels, and for their special benefits, the Lord travels all over the world in the form of self-realized persons like you. Text 17. The great sages Maitri continued. Thus Sanat Kumara, the best of the celibates, after hearing the speech of Pṛthu Maharaj, which was meaningful, appropriate, full of precise words, and very sweet to hear, smiled with full satisfaction and began to speak as follows. Text 18. Sanat Kumara said, My dear King Pṛthu, I am very nicely questioned by you. Such questions are beneficial for all living entities, especially because they are raised by you, who are always thinking of the good of others. Although you know everything, you ask such questions because this is the behavior of saintly persons. Such intelligence is befitting your position. Text 19. When there is a congregation of devotees, the discussions, questions, and answers become conclusive to both the speaker and the audience. Thus, such a meeting is beneficial for everyone's real happiness. Text 20. Sanat Kumara continued, My dear King, you already have an inclination to glory the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such attachment is very difficult to achieve, but when one has attained such unflinching faith in the Lord, it automatically cleanses lusty desires from the core of the heart. Text 21. It has been conclusively decided in the scriptures after due consideration that the ultimate goal for the welfare of human society is detachment from bodily concept of life and increased and steadfast attachment for the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental beyond the modes of material nature. Text 22. Attachment for the Supreme can be increased by practicing devotional service, inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, applying bhakti yoga in life, worshipping the Yogeshwara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by hearing and chanting about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These actions are pious in themselves. Text 23. One has to make progress in spiritual life, but by not associating with persons who are simply interested in sense gratification and making money. Not only such persons, but one who associates with such persons should be avoided. One should mold his life in such a way that he cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. One can thus be elevated by being disgusted with the taste of for sense enjoyment. Text 24. A candidate for spiritual advancement must be non-violent, must follow in the footsteps of great acharyas, must always remember the nectar of the pastime of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must follow the regulative principles without material desire, and while following the regulative principles, should not blaspheme others. A devotee should lead a very simple life and not be disturbed by the duality of opposing elements. He should learn to tolerate them. Text 25. The devotee should gradually increase the culture of devotional service by constant hearing of the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These pastimes are like ornamental decorations on the ears of the devotees. By rendering the devotional service and transcending the material qualities, one can easily be fixed in transcendence in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 26. Upon becoming fixed in his attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the grace of the spiritual master and by awakening knowledge and detachment, the living entity, situated within the heart of the body and covered by the five elements, burn up his material surroundings exactly as fire, arising from wood, burns the wood itself. Text 27. When a person becomes devoid of all material desires and liberated from all material qualities, he transcends distinctions between action executed externally and internally. At that time, the difference between the soul and the super soul, which was existing before self-realization, is annihilated. When a dream is over, there is no longer a distinction between the dream and the dreamer. Text 28. When the soul exists for self-gratification, he creates different desires, and for that reason, he becomes subjected to designations. But when one is in the transcendental position, he is no longer interested in anything except fulfilling the desire of the Lord. Text 29. Only because of different causes does a person see the difference between himself and others, just as one sees the reflection of a body appearing differently manifested on water, on oil, or in a mirror. Text 30. When one's mind and senses are attracted to sense objects for enjoyment, the mind becomes agitated. as a result of continually thinking of sense object, one's real consciousness almost becomes lost, like the water in a lake that is gradually sucked up by the big grass straws on its bank. Text 31. When one deviates from his original consciousness, he loses the capacity to remember his previous positions or recognize his present one. When remembrance is lost, all knowledge acquired is based on a false foundation. When this occurs, learned scholars consider that the soul is lost. Text 32. There is no stronger obstructions to one's self-interest than thinking other subject matters to be more pleasing than one's self-realization. Text 33. For human society, constantly thinking of how to earn money and apply it for sense gratification brings about the destruction of everyone's interest. When one becomes devoid of knowledge and devotional service, he enters into species of life like those of trees and stones. Text 34. Those who strongly desire to cross the ocean of nescience must not associate in the modes of ignorance, for hedonistic activities are the greatest obstructions to realization of religious principles, economic development, regulated sense gratification, and at last liberation. Text 35. Out of the four principles, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, liberation has to be taken very seriously. The other three are subject to destruction by the stringent law of nature, death. Text 36. We accept as blessings different states of higher life, distinguishing them from lower states of life. But we should know that such distinctions exist only in relation to the interchange of the modes of material nature. Actually, these states of life have no permanent existence, for all of them will be destroyed by the Supreme Controller. Text 37. Sanat Kumara advised the king, therefore, my dear King Pṛthu, try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within everyone's heart along with the individual soul, in each and every body, either moving or not moving. The individual souls are fully covered by the gross material body and subtle body made of the life, air, and intelligence. Text 38. The Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself as one with the cause and effect within this body, but one who has transcended the illusionary energy by deliberate consideration, which clears the misconception of a snake for a rope, can understand that the Paramatma is eternally transcendental to the material creation and situated in pure eternal energy. Thus, the Lord is transcendental to all material contamination, and to him only must one surrender. Text 39. The devotees who are always engaged in the service of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord can very easily overcome hard-knotted desires for fruitive activities, because this is very difficult. The non-devotees, the jnanis, and yogis, although trying to stop the waves of sense gratification, cannot do so. Therefore, you are advised to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Text 40. The ocean of nescience is very difficult to cross because it is infested with many dangerous sharks. Although those who are non-devotees undergo severe austerities and penances to cross that ocean, we recommend that you simply take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are like boats from crossing the ocean. Although the ocean is difficult to cross, by taking shelter of his lotus feet, you will overcome all dangers. Text 41. The great sage Maitreya continued, being thus enlightened in complete spiritual knowledge by the son of Brahma, one of the Kumaras who was complete in spiritual knowledge, the king worshipped them in the following words. The text 42. The king said, O Brahmana, O powerful one, formerly Lord Vishnu showed me his causeless mercy, indicating that you would come to my house, and to confirm that blessing you have all come. Text 43. My dear Brahmana, you have carried out the order thoroughly because you are also compassionate as the Lord. It is my duty, therefore, to offer you something, but all I possess are but remnants of food taken by great saintly persons. What shall I give? Text 44. The king continued, therefore, my dear Brahmanas, my life, wife, children, home, furniture, and household paraphernalia, my kingdom, strength, land, and especially my treasury are all offered unto you. Text 45. Since only a person who is completely educated according to the principles of Vedic knowledge deserves to be commander-in-chief, ruler of the state, the first to chastise or the proprietor of the whole planet, Pṛthu Maharaj, offered everything to the Kumaras. Text 46. The Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Shudra eat their food by virtue of the Brahmanas' mercy. It is the Brahmanas who enjoy their own property, clothe themselves with their own property, and give charity with their own property. Text 47. Pṛthu Maharaj continued. How can such persons who have rendered unlimited service by explaining the path of self-realization in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and whose explanations are given for our enlightenment with complete conviction and Vedic evidence, be repaid except by folded palms containing water for their satisfaction? Such great personalities can be satisfied only by their own activities, which are distributed amongst human society out of their unlimited mercy. Text 48. The great sage continued. Being thus worshipped by Maharaj Pṛthu, the four Kumaras who were masters of devotional service became very pleased. Indeed, they appeared in the sky and praised the character of the king, and everyone observed them. Text 49. Amongst great personality, Maharaj Pṛthu was the chief by virtue of his fixed position in relation to spiritual enlightenment. He remained satisfied as one who has achieved all success in spiritual understanding. Text 50. Being self-satisfied, Pṛthu Maharaj executed his duties as perfectly as possible according to the time and his situation, strength and financial position. His only aim in all his activities was to satisfy the absolute truth. In this way, he duly acted. Text 51. Maharaj Pṛthu completely dedicated himself to be an eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transcendental to material nature. Consequently, all the fruits of his activities were dedicated to the Lord, and he always thought of himself as the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of everything. Text 52. Maharaj Pṛthu, who was very opulent due to the prosperity of his entire empire, remained at home as a householder. Since he was never inclined to utilize opulences for the gratification of his senses, he remained unattached, exactly like the sun, which is unaffected by in all circumstances. Text 53. Being situated in the liberated position of devotional service, Pṛthu Maharaj not only performed all fruitive activities, but also begot 5 sons by his wife, Archie. Indeed, all his sons were begotten according to his own desire. Text 54. After begetting 5 sons, named Vijitaswa, Dhumareksha, Haryaksha, and Dravina, and Vartha, Pṛthu Maharaj continued to rule the planet. He accepted all the qualities of the deities who governed all other planets. Text 55. Since Pṛthu Maharaj was a perfect devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he wanted to protect the Lord's creation by pleasing the various citizens according to their various desires. Therefore, Pṛthu Maharaj used to please them in all respects by his words, mentality, works, and gentle behavior. Text 56. Maharaj Pṛthu became as celebrated a king as Somaraja, the king of the moon. He was also powerful and exacting, just like the sun god, who distributes heat and light and at the same time exacts all the planetary waters. Text 57. Maharaj Pṛthu was so strong and powerful that no one could disobey his orders any more than one could conquer fire itself. He was so strong that he was compared to Indra, the king of the heaven, whose power is insuperable. On the other hand, Pṛthu Maharaj was also as tolerant as the earth. In fulfilling various desires of human society, he was like heaven itself. Text 58. Just as rainfall satisfies everyone's desires, Maharaj Pṛthu used to satisfy everyone. He was like the sea in that no one could understand his depths, and he was like Meru, the king of hills, in the fixity of his purpose. Text 59. Maharaj Pṛthu's intelligence and education were exactly like that of the Yamraj, the superintendent of death. His opulence was comparable to the Himalayan mountains, where all valuable jewels and metals are stocked. He possessed great riches like Kuvera, the treasure of the heavenly planets, and no one could reveal his secrets for they were like the demigods Varuna. Text 60. In his bodily strength and in the strength of his senses, Maharaj Pṛthu was as strong as the wind, which can go anywhere and everywhere. As far as his intolerance was concerned, he was just like all-powerful Rudra expansion of Lord Shiva and Sadashiva. Text 61. In his bodily beauty, he was just like Cupid, and in his thoughtfulness, he was like a lion. In his affection, he was just like Swayambhuva Manu, and in his ability to control, he was like Lord Brahma. Text 62. In his personal behavior, Pṛthu Maharaj exhibited all good qualities, and in spiritual knowledge, he was exactly like Brahaspati. In self-control, he was like the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. As far as devotional service was concerned, he was a great follower of devotees who were attached to cow protection and rendering all the services to the spiritual master and the Brahmanas. He was perfect in his shyness and in his gentle behavior. And when he engaged in some philanthropic activities, he worked as if he were working for his personal self. Text 63. Throughout the whole universe, in the higher, lower, or middle planetary system, Pṛthu Maharaj's reputation was loudly declared, and all ladies and saintly persons heard his glories, which were as sweet as the glories of Lord Ramachandra.
Sure. Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Maharaj
Hare
ki
Krishna.
jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta ki jai. Hare Krishna.